Hello, I'm Montgomery County Auditor Keith, and welcome to another edition of Odds and Ends. Odds and Ends is a production of the Montgomery County Auditor's Office where each month we interview a person from the community, someone who's out here making a difference in the community one way or another, and hear what they're all about, give you a little bit about their background, and also what their job responsibilities is or what programs they're involved with. And this month I'm really pleased to have the new Montgomery County Engineer with me, Andy Shahan. Andy, thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
And I say the new Montgomery County Engineer because, let's see, you just were sworn in, a month ago?
A couple
of weeks ago, yeah. So it's excited to have you, and it's a great opportunity for people to get to know you a little bit.
Sure.
And because, let's see, Paul Gruner retired as the engineer, and he'd been there 14 years?
Yeah, in the office 14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
So, usually when you get in this county engineer, you're a young guy, you could be there forever.
Could be if I do the job well.
Yeah. So we're glad to have you, and glad to have you in county government, and just want to get to know you a little bit.
Sure.
And today, and so thank you for joining us. So you have been in the private sector primarily up until maybe a year ago?
Yeah, October of last year is when I joined Paul's staff.
Okay.
So from December of 1998 until September of 2023, I worked at LJB, which is a local engineering and architecture firm.
Okay.
So
right.
Roughly 25 years of private sector experience there.
And Paul had worked at Wolpert's, right, at one point in his career?
He did. Wolpert and Gresham Smith Partners, I think,
okay.
were the two places.
County engineers are unique because they have specific credentials that they have to have. Right. I'm the county auditor. I could be, I just have to be alive and a registered voter, or my credentials. But I'm kidding. I'm kidding, everybody. I'm kidding. But county engineers, you have to have some professional qualifications in order to be the county engineer. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, licensure on two fronts, as a professional engineer in the state of Ohio and as a professional surveyor in the state of Ohio. So both are come on the back of a 4-year degree, and in my case, it was civil engineering at the University of Evansville, and then some additional coursework after the degree in civil engineering led to the surveying expertise that I would need to be able to sit for the exam. So it was like an 8-year process.
To earn both of those designations.
Both, yeah, because think of it like an apprenticeship program. I got to work for a certain number of years, 4 years, to kind of learn the skills that I would need to practice professionally as a registered engineer. I did that for the first 4 years of my career, and then the second 4 was focused on the surveying side. So,
can you do the work you simultaneously to learn both designations?
You can. Today's requirements to be able to count some of your time, your work history, are different than they were in 2003 and 2007 when I got both licenses. So I don't want to say it's easier, but it is the accounting of your time as it overlaps is different today than it was when I got licenses.
There are not a lot of people that have this qualification. Right?
You're right. There's not.
It's kind of a limited universe.
It
right?
is. Yeah. I was thinking about our time together, and I hadn't looked that up, frankly, in a while. You can go on to the State Board of Registration's website and look up all of the licensed professionals in engineering and surveying. You have to do a little bit of work because they don't have the ability to look up who's dual licensed, but I think this will speak to the kind of the scarcity of the expertise. In Montgomery County, there are 9 registered surveyors.
Okay,
so
that limits the number.
Not
right
all
there.
of them
are certified engineers.
Right.
Okay,
yeah. So it's a small pool.
Less than 9. Right?
Yeah,
9 or less.
9 or less.
9 or less, just in Montgomery County.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of counties struggle to find people who are qualified. Do you think? What do you think about those dual qualifications?
Yeah.
Now you've been there since October.
Sure.
So how does that?
Well, I'm an advocate for both.
Okay.
And it's easy to, I guess, call that enlightened self-interest because I'm dual licensed now. But I think some of what I've learned since being in the office and since October is some of the I guess the biggest challenges that the county engineer faces is really more on the surveying side than it is on the engineering side.
Okay.
And so to uncouple that requirement, the engineering and surveying, I don't know that it would serve the community in the way that it was intended when we, passed a law to make it a dual licensure requirement.
So you were at LJB how long?
25 years.
25 years,
Yeah.
and not all in Ohio. Right? You were doing some projects out of the state, correct?
Yeah. So just the nature of being a consultant, most of the work in my experience was in Ohio, but LJB was a growth-minded company, and so we tackled work outside the state as we grew. And so the majority of my work was for the Department of Transportation in Ohio. So ODOT is the acronym for that. I did a lot of work for local public agencies, especially here in Southwest Ohio. I mean, I worked for the Montgomery County Engineer's Office as a consultant. So,
okay.
And that was for both Joe Litvin and for Paul Gruner. But I was responsible for all of our business with ODOT as well as with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. So very focused on transportation type design work. And more recently, in the back end of my time at LJB, I was responsible for our transportation operations. So that became more of an administrator role, worrying about making sure that we had the right talent on the right projects at the right time.
Okay. So do you think there's a big difference between private sector work and the public sector work?
Well, the technical piece of it, not really. I mean, there's still projects. There's a need. There's an identified need to deal with transportation infrastructure, and that's the same. Whether it's designing a road, or designing a bridge, whether it's in Montgomery County or it's in Kentucky, there are nuances, but it's fundamentally the same. But there are certainly differences in the mindset of the county engineer being an agent of the commissioners who own all the infrastructure in the county. Is you own this, right? You're responsible not just for the near-term improvement that needs to be done, but for the life cycle of that asset that's in our infrastructure. And you don't really think about that when you're a consultant, because you're hired to take care of one job. And
then move on.
And then
right?
move on to the next job, right?
Yeah,
So it's a different mindset.
Okay. What made you think then to what encouraged you or urged you or brought you to go to the public sector?
That's a great question. And I've had all sorts of people ask me that, right? Both
you had a great private sector career.
I did. I did, and worked with a lot of great people. That answer really has tentacles to it. So there's a lot of things. Well, the first is I probably reference is timing. I mean, the reality is that I had been talking with Paul for a while about what his timeline would be for retirement, and
you had some exposure experience.
I did, because I worked with him,
Sure.
So I knew as I talked with him about that, I started thinking about, okay, well, where will I be in my career when he decides it's time to retire, and those two things married up fairly well.
Those of us in county government, we didn't know that Paul would ever retire.
Right, yeah. So timing was important. The other piece of it was that I had a lot of colleagues at LJB that I cared for a lot, because I worked with them for a lot of years, and I was blessed to be in a position of leadership at LJB pretty young in my career, and I had a lot of contemporary colleagues, people with similar age and experience as me, that I kind of felt like I was in the way of their opportunity to grow in their career. And so, if I left LJB to go do something different, it provided them with some opportunity. So I saw that as a win-win for them if I had the right opportunity. So, there's an element of you do the same thing for 25 years, exploring something different would be fun, right? And so I was intrigued by the mindset of owning the infrastructure that frankly is in the area that I live and where I grew up, and that was a little bit different than what I was doing as a consultant. I was, in a way, I was the guy building the fence on the ranch instead of being the rancher.
Okay.
Right? And so I was doing that all over really the eastern part of the United States, and so it was intriguing to me to go and work on projects, or continue to work on projects that were here local. As I reflected on my time at LJB and the projects that I got to work on there, the projects that were most rewarding for me to lead were the ones that were here. in Montgomery County, where I
I've
live.
heard you say that. I've
Yeah.
heard you say that you found those most rewarding, and it had something to do with when your kids got their driver's license or something, right?
Yeah, well, that started the thought there, right? Because I have 4 children, and my oldest is 25. I got 3 driving age children, and as they started to drive, I started to think more about the roads they're driving on, and so there was some I guess some benefit there that I could work on those roads and bridges that my kids were going to be driving on, young drivers, right? So
just a different mindset there, right? Different mindset.
Yeah, certainly was.
So I want to talk a little bit then about what all the county engineer is responsible for and what
Sure.
all that you do. And so, we're getting the end of summer here, going into fall. So we're almost past orange barrel season, are we? Or
Yeah,
not
we get
really?
close.
Getting
Yeah.
close.
Asphalt plants will usually be open until October, November time frame, so you might
Okay.
see some barrels until.
Still, and so if you see all these orange barrels around and road
Yeah.
work going on, so we can blame you for that?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
or partially?
Or thank me.
Or thank you. Okay, all right, okay.
Right. Yeah. So we're it's the work is seasonal in that our projects, construction activities, obviously it's when the weather is fair, but another large part of what we're responsible for is maintaining in the roads that we drive on, the roads and bridges, and in the winter that means snow and ice control.
Mm-hmm.
So believe it or not, as we sat here today in August, I was in the garage at our facility out in Little Richmond, and they're already gearing up the trucks for snow and ice control. So,
Sure.
Yeah, getting the trucks ready to put plows on the front and
Mm-hmm.
spreaders on the back and that sort of thing. So, that's a quarter of our year, if not a third of our year, is devoted to being prepared for, keeping the roads clear in those inclement weather situations.
Now you're not responsible for clearing all the roads.
No, just county maintained roads.
County maintained roads.
Yeah, so there's a hierarchy of roadway. Obviously, the interstates belong to the DOT or state routes, and then I would tell you that the county routes, which are most of the through routes in the county, those are the ones that we're responsible for clearing. And then you get into jurisdictions of cities, they would be responsible in most cases for clearing their roads, and then there are some township roads as well. So there's really 4 maintaining agencies, and that goes for all the state of Ohio, but in Montgomery County, it's the DOT, the county, the cities,
Mm-hmm.
and then the townships.
The same thing with the bridges too, right?
Yeah.
You're responsible for some bridges, but not all bridges.
Correct, and a little bit different there. So obviously no bridges on the interstate, not responsible for those. So I'm responsible for, or our team is responsible for all the bridges on the county routes. But then also by law, we're also responsible for those bridges that are on township routes.
Okay.
And then we have some bridges that are within city jurisdictions. Has to do with, goes over waterways, and there's like a number of kind of cascading if-then type things. Those
Mm-hmm.
bridges are ours, but we have a lot, 540 roughly. That number changes.
540
Bridges.
bridges in the county.
Which is the most in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
Of all the counties in Ohio, I'm lucky enough to be responsible for more of them than anybody else. So, yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're the 5 rivers,
We
right?
are.
We got
You're right.
5
Comes
rivers
together.
and some major waterways,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's important.
It is.
It's important. I know. I've often heard Paul and other engineers talk about the condition of the bridges, and so that's one
Right.
thing you do too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is monitor those conditions
do.
and.
So we have an annual inspection program. We have 2 people that are dedicated full time to inspecting all those bridges every year,
Mhm.
and so that inspection process leads to us, putting a general appraisal rating on them, which is basically our keeping score of how
Mhm.
what the condition is, and then we watch that for trends year over year to see if things are declining on the bridge, and that's what leads to the need for improvements and planning those.
Bridge work, roadway
Mhm.
improvements, building new roadways, expanding them.
Yeah.
Those things are all expensive undertakings,
money.
right? And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of money involved.
There is.
And so that's a big part of your job too, is to make sure there's the funds available to do this work.
Correct. Yeah. So roughly speaking, we're about a $24 million annual budget, and I would say about $13 million of that is devoted to projects.
Okay.
And the revenues for the office would come from the pump. We go to the gas station and we we pump gas and taxes tied to that, and that comes directly to the county engineers funds to take care of the roads and bridges. And there's also fees that are tied to registrations for vehicle registration. So it's intended to be user based, right?
Yes.
You use the roadways, and you should be paying for that.
You pay for it,
right?
Then, but there's also like grants and things like that available.
Absolutely.
Like federal funding that's available for some of these projects.
Yeah, and if that wasn't available to us, we
wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, our capacity to build anything new in particular would be next to nothing. I mean, most of the grants that we're able to deliver are set up in a kind of a ratio where our local share is 10 to 20% of the total project cost, and the other 80 to 90% is what we're able to capture from federal funds. And our team, that's one of the things I learned when I came to the office, is that we have a lot of really talented people, and we're really good at identifying opportunities for us to do more with less. Deliver projects with other people's money. So
what are some big projects the office is working on now?
Our biggest project we're working on right now is up by the airport. We call it the Northeast Logistics Project. So it's a project that has some federal funds tied to it. The Transportation Review Advisory Council, ODOT's acronym for that is TRAC.
Okay.
TRAC is paying for 80% of roughly a $20 million project to improve, I'm going to say, the northeast side ring road around the airport. So it's Lightner Road, North Dixie, Northwoods Boulevard to the interstate. So that's a big improvement for us. It's going to require acquisition of some property, but it's expanding capacity and obviously serving development that's happening around the airport. So I would say, I think about it in terms of the spectrum, that's the largest project.
Okay.
Just last week, we had a hearing at the commission meeting for a small storm sewer improvement, that's on Shiloh Springs Road, that super important, because when it rains too much, water doesn't get into the basin and it floods the roadway, and that's dangerous, right? So we're addressing that. And then we got some unique projects in the middle in terms of size and scope. Down I call it Dayton Cincinnati Pike. It's on the very southern end of the county, heading into the city of Franklin in Warren County. There's an 800-foot long wall there. It's 125 years old. That was part of one of the original traction lines that ran along the canal.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that area, there's a lot going on right next to the river. So we're removing that wall, and
that area kind of floods on a regular basis.
It does, and if you want to see what 125-year-old concrete looks like, you can drive down or go down the Great Miami River Trail, because it's the wall is, I guess that would be on the east side of the trail there. So we've got a project that's actually collaborative, working with the city of Franklin, because the wall goes across the county line in the city of Franklin, and we're removing the wall because it needs to be removed.
So, but some of the projects that people see, like on I-75 and 70,
those are somebody else's barrels.
Those are somebody else's barrel, right?
Yeah. We do have a lot going on in Montgomery County. In ODOT District 7, their headquarters is up in Sydney. Very collaborative with us. I mean, they communicate with my office about impacts to traffic on I-75. Because obviously we drive through that as residents of the county. They got a lot going on. 2 different places, north of downtown, and south of downtown. And peak hours are a lot of fun right now. So.
I try to avoid it, to be honest with you. I think that's there's surface roads, I think, that serve the county really well.
Yeah.
And it may take you 5 or 10 minutes longer to get from one, but you're moving. You're moving, and
Right.
So how many people are in the engineer's office?
I don't know the exact number, but say roughly 100.
Do you bring in summer help on some of these projects?
We have in the past. I mean, I'm going to tell you on the engineering side, most of the time it's interns, co-ops. We're thinking about the future there.
No, I think that would be something that engineering students would love to
absolutely.
do.
Absolutely.
Have that opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have about 100 people, and I don't know the exact split here, but roughly I'm going to say 40 of them report to our downtown 8th floor of the administration building, and then the balance roughly are out at at our operations facility
on Little Richmond Road out in Trotwood.
Right. We have 2, I'm going to call them satellite offices for our construction inspectors that are north north side of the county and south side of the county so that they can report closer to where our projects are every day.
Well, you've not been there a long time, not even a year.
Right.
And you've not been the engineer for a month,
Yeah,
right?
measured in weeks.
Yeah, measured in weeks.
Yeah.
So this might not be a fair question to ask, but what kind of vision do you have for the office, or how would you see the office in the future? What are some of your long-term goals, I guess? I know you have to build roads and bridges.
Sure.
But what are your long-term goals, you think?
No, that's a great question. And I'm going to give Paul some credit here in his mentorship of me. You know, he added me to his team in October, and it gave me time to learn the people, learn the processes in the organization, which I think was really important, valuable to me.
Meet other elected officials.
Yeah, sure. And what that did is it gave me some time to kind of think about, well, what will I want my legacy to be, right? And how do I start putting together a plan to work towards that? And so I have shared with everybody, I wasn't trying to fix anything. So it's not like I came to the office thinking, man, this is broken, I need to fix it. I just want to continue to build on the good work that our team is doing. So I would say first and foremost, I want to improve our level of service to the people who use roads and bridges in Montgomery County. And that's not coming. I'm not trying to. There's no indictment there on we've not been doing it well. But the coach in me, we're either growing or we're dying. Right.
Okay.
So I want to get better at what we're doing, and so I'm going to be looking for ways for us to improve how we serve not only the people that use our roads and bridges in the county, but also our business partners, the regulatory agencies that we work with on a regular basis. That I want their experience working with our office to improve. Second thing I would say is I want to maintain the financial health of the organization. I mean, it's one of the fundamental differences between my 25 years of experience in the private sector and the experience I've had so far in the public sector is that in the private sector we were very growth minded. So revenues into the organization they increased year over year if you were doing business the way you wanted to. Our revenues are going to be pretty steady for periods of time until there's law and legislation that changes that. And so we got to do well with what we have, right? And so that'll be a focus. And then lastly, and probably most important, is I want to make sure that we're retaining and recruiting talent. What I've told everybody in the first couple of meetings that I've had with them is that I want our teamwork to be top notch. And one, I want that to be the case because people like to be at work and they like the people they work with. And two, I want others to, when they observe us doing our work, I want them to say, man, it looks like a fun place to work. If the opportunity presents itself, I want to go work there, right? And so to the extent that we can choose our people to do the work of the office, I want to be able to do that. So retaining and recruiting talent's top of mind for me. That's
an important thing for county government, period. As time goes on, sometimes some of the benefits of working in the public sector aren't quite the same as they were many years ago.
Right.
And so it becomes a struggle, I think, sometimes for my office, a struggle to recruit and retain people. And we're in Southwest Ohio, right? We're not in Florida or Georgia. We're in Southwest Ohio, and so making opportunities available for young people. That's why I think interns are a nice way to try to encourage people to.
Oh, absolutely.
I have a number of interns that I've used over the years, and a lot of them it becomes a recruitment thing for me. A lot of them hired some of them full time afterwards, and so that's important, I think. I know that funding, we brought it up funding earlier. Again, other engineers that I've worked with in the past, it was always a struggle. Trying to get increases in federal funding or state funding. Like you said, these are reliant on what we pay at the pump primarily, and so those things don't get changed very often.
They don't.
They take years sometimes to get something passed. So
and there's I'm going to call them environmental influencers right now to
Sure.
that. I mean, we have more and more people driving electric cars, so they're not.
That's an issue
they're not
too.
getting gas, right? Which
Right.
means we're not generating revenues that we maybe would have in a petroleum-based environment. So those things all impact what our revenues are, what we're working with.
I know the engineer is required, as you mentioned, your relationship with the townships and providing help support to the townships. So I know the engineer is required to do an annual report to the township trustees, and for years now they've done that. Your predecessors have done that. They'd had a dinner, and or at some point in the spring or something. Are you planning on keeping that? Because I always enjoyed going to those.
Well, I'm required to do an annual report. Meeting with the townships makes a lot of sense. Obviously, it's efficient when you're telling them all the same story. They hear the same thing at once.
I always found it interesting, to learn all the different projects.
I may not do it in the spring. So I mentioned earlier I coach high school softball at Bellbrook High School, and so
you're still doing that.
I am. Okay. I am, and so springtime's.
Okay, it's a springtime
in the evenings.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm
I got
a
you.
little tied up, so I may need to wait till after a state championship June 1st to have that meeting.
Okay, until you win that game.
Right.
Until you win that game.
Right.
You're a football player, right? You played football.
Yeah. I was at the University of Evansville in Indiana. I was a specialist there. So, yes, a collegiate athlete, but softball. My story to that is, it's different. My father was a high school coach at Northmont High School. My sister was a pretty good player. She played at Miami of Ohio. So when I was in high school, I thought that's just something sis does. And but then first two children were girls, and I got soaked into coaching when they were 8, and rest is history.
Well, good for you. Good for you. We wish you great success.
Thank you.
We wish you great success out on the softball diamond and in the engineer's office. I think Paul. I think has made a great choice. Paul was like. He was always telling people, I'm planning on retiring, and I'm looking for, someone I think I could fill my shoes and do a really good job, and I have someone in mind. Yeah, who's that? Well, I can't tell you who that is, and I don't want to do that. So he kept that pretty close to his chest. Well done. Yeah. But I think he thinks from my conversation with him, he thinks the world of you, and he thinks you're going to be an outstanding engineer, and again, someone who's deeply committed to the community. And that's what it takes for all these jobs in county government. But this is an important responsibility, and I'm very pleased that you've chosen to take on this role in county government.
Well, it's certainly a blessing that I've been given the opportunity by Paul to come and be part of the team, and then obviously pursue election here on the November ballot. And I'm looking forward to serving and working on the roads and bridges that my family and friends and community members all get used every day, right? I want to keep them safe, and I want them to be able to get to where they're going when they expect to get there. So.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for what you do, and appreciate you being on our program this month. And so, again, my guest today has been Andy Shahan, our new Montgomery County Engineer, and we appreciate him being with us. And that will wrap us up for this episode of Odds and Ends. See you next time.